Well, good morning. Good morning. It's good to be here with you for another Bible Coffee. Welcome. I'm Travis.
And I'm Megan.
It's good to be here with you, and we're together over the computer. We're not always able to have our morning coffee together, so here we're having it online, and we're talking about some Bible. So I'm glad that you all were able to join us. So we are looking at Genesis chapter 15, and this is God giving Abram the covenant, lots of reassurance again. So let's just go ahead and dig in. We've got a lot to talk about today.
Let's dig in.
I will be reading from the column on the right, the JPS Tanakh translation. The column on the left is the NRSV. You're invited to follow along on either side or with your own translation, or just listen as we read. Genesis chapter 15. Sometime later, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. He said, "Fear not, Abram. I am a shield to you. Your reward shall be very great." But Abram said, "O Lord God, what can you give me, seeing that I shall die childless? And the one in charge of my household is Damasek Eleazar." Abram said further, "Since you've granted me no offspring, my steward will be my heir." The word of the Lord came to him in reply, "That one shall not be your heir. None but your very own issue shall be your heir." He took him outside and said, "Look toward heaven and count the stars, if you're able to count them." And he added, "So shall your offspring be." And because he put his trust in the Lord, he reckoned it to his merit. Then he said to him, "I am the Lord who brought you out from Ur of the Chaldeans to assign this land to you as a possession." And he said, "O Lord God, how shall I know that I am to possess it?" He answered, "Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old she-goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young bird." He brought him all these and cut them in two, placing each half opposite the other. But he did not cut up the bird. Birds of prey came down upon the carcasses, and Abram drove them away. As the sun was about to set, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and a great dark dread descended upon him. And he said to Abram, "Know well that your offspring shall be strangers in a land not theirs, and they shall be enslaved and oppressed 400 years. But I will execute judgment on the nation they serve, and in the end they shall go free with great wealth. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a ripe old age. And they shall return here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete." When the sun set, it was very dark. There appeared a smoking oven, and a flaming torch which passed between those pieces. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, "To your offspring I assign this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. The Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites." The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of the Lord lives forever. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
All right, quite the passage there. Some interesting stuff happening.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little bit of turn of events here, right?
Turn of events? How do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, everything kind of was going in Abram's way, and then now we get to a point where, he was this warlord. He should be completely confident in everything that he's doing, and it seems like in this passage he has this great deal of trust for God and what God's telling him about getting this land and these wonderful things that will be bestowed upon him. And
the descendants and the land and everything.
The descendants, the land, all this stuff. And then he trusts God but he doesn't seem like he's too confident because there's all this repetitive reassurance that needs to be given to Abraham during this time. So that kind of makes you kind of see him in a little bit different way, I think.
Yeah, I think you're just catching on to, the point and what we're supposed to be getting out of this. We read these blessings and it seems kind of repetitive. And we kind of can get lost in, like, we've already read that God's going to bless them, numerous descendants, stars in the sky. We've read this already, but the point is, like you're saying, that this is a highlight of how much reassurance God is trying to give Abram.
Yeah, and it's like this continuation of reassurance that them, he has to say, "Oh, okay, all right, you don't believe me? Go out and get this 3-year-old, whatever animal."
Yeah, animals.
get these animals
and all that.
Yeah.
Not plural, just one of each.
Yeah, one of each. And then he cuts them in half, and he goes through this whole process.
He sort of, and the passage starts out just with God just randomly coming to Abram saying, "Don't worry, I'm a shield for you, and your descendants will be great." Just this kind of reassurance out of nowhere. It's like God already knew that Abram must have been struggling with this question about his descendants in his mind.
Yeah, especially not, and then the whole like, oh, I'm gonna have to, leave my possessions to somebody who's not an heir. It's interesting to think of it that way, because initially even I thought it was like, why does that matter so much about the possessions? But I think, it goes back to what those possessions really mean. And those possessions are kind of memories of the struggles that him and Sarai has gone through already, through this journey that they've been on. So I don't know. I just see it a little bit differently, I guess.
Yeah, it's a tough question because they built up all these possessions, all these riches, all this stuff, and Abram's worried because he sees everything they've collected, and all he's got is his steward, Damasek Eleazar, to inherit it. He doesn't have his own family, his own loved ones, people who are that important to him to inherit it, and it's bothering him. And God gave him this reinsurance kind of out of nowhere, and then Abram's like, "What can you really give me? I'm obviously going to die without children."
Why does it matter? Stop giving me things, but they're memories. But I think God also said something very important when he got, the dream that he had. The dream that Abram had, right? Because,
was that a dream or a vision? It was like it was dark, and this dark dread came down upon him. So it's kind of unclear if it was a vision while he was awake or if he was dreaming. I don't really know how to take that.
Yeah. Well, so dream or vision. Either way, God shared with him what was going to happen to his descendants. So right there, it almost should have told Abraham, you're going to have an heir somewhere along the line, because you can't have all these descendants and have them go through this 400 years of oppression and, without having some kind of heir, right?
Yeah.
Didn't that tell him he's going to have a child?
Yeah, and God just keeps hammering down. So Abram questions it, like, "What are you going to give me?" And then God's like, "Can you count the stars in the sky? That's how many descendants you're going to have. Come on, listen to me."
Yeah, he's doubting it pretty hard, but it's just like kind of glaring in his face that something's going to happen. God is saying that you are going to have an heir. Yeah. Be patient.
Yeah, and then not only that, and then that dream happens, and Abram sees this smoking oven and this flaming torch pass between the pieces of the animals that he cut up.
What is that?
Oh, that's a good question. This story is referencing the future events in the Exodus. They end up in Egypt, and they end up as slaves, oppressed for 400 years, and then they end up being led out of Egypt and getting to possess the land and becoming wealthy again after all that stuff. So what in the world could that torch be passing through the pieces, the dead carcasses? And it seems like, and I think we should probably do some reading to verify this, but I believe that's referring to the pillar of fire that God is represented as sometimes leading the people out of Egypt. And remember, they were passing through the waters on the dry land, so they passed through that, and they also passed through all the dead bodies of the Egyptians when the firstborn people were killed. Firstborn children were killed in Egypt, and the Israelites, because of the Passover, their firstborn children were not killed, and they passed through all this death, plagues, tragedy of Egypt on their way out to the Promised Land. The pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire, those were God led the people by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night as they start journeying, and that's how God led them.
Okay.
So I think that this vision is a sign of things to come, that yes, the promises will come true, and the people will be enslaved and oppressed on the way. It'll be very difficult and awful experience, but God will be with them the whole time, and in the end God will lead them out, and God will bring judgment on the Egyptians, and the people will ultimately receive the promise that God is promising here when they receive the Promised Land.
Let's talk about the oppression. So, from my perspective, Abram, he wants an heir. That's obviously important to him. He finds out he's going to have an heir. But then, not only is he going to have an heir, but all his descendants are going to go through what you just said, 400 years of oppression. All that they had went through. And, it's like, whew, do you really want that for your descendants? Like, if somebody told me that, my child and all my descendants were going to go through all this, horrible events in their lives, I don't know if my possessions and passing down those, which I would refer to as almost memories at this time, would be worth it. I mean, it's just kind of questionable. I'm not saying that, I'm just talking.
And that's a good point. So is he more worried about, where his possessions are going to go, or is he more worried about having family and his legacy carrying on through his passing down his possessions to his heirs? Is he more concerned about his heirs, or is he more concerned about his possessions?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't say, because when I hear possessions, I think of, materialistic. And I don't think of that specifically in this certain situation because of the time frame, because of what they went through. I mean, Sarai, again, what she did and what, he had to endure as part of that, that in order for them to have the possessions they had, they went through a lot. So to me, it's like memories, So it's the memories and then also just the extension of the family. So
and then there's also the stigma too, because if you die childless, then it's as if you are cursed in some way. I mean, some of that still hangs around today, but back then it was like, yeah, Sarah wasn't fully a woman, Abram wasn't fully a man, because they weren't able to have children.
That's a good point. That's a good point. No, I think that's a good point, because it maybe, I think that's valid. That's a valid point, because that definitely was the stigma at that point in time, as far as, them not being able to have an heir.
Yeah, but then again, they can't undercut the importance of an heir inheriting all that they have and all that they have going to who they believe it should go to, because it comes up later. That's with Isaac and Ishmael, Sarah and Hagar. That's what they start getting into it over, is really about which boy is going to inherit the fortune that Abram and Sarai, or Abraham and Sarah, later on have put together. So that inheriting is a reoccurring theme.
I just find this very interesting, because it's almost, it's a different turn, from the previous passages in talking about Abram, because you think of, and kind of like I envision him as being this, kind of strong person. So, the lack of confidence, and then, still trusting in God, and like the decisions he made to continue.
Trust.
Yeah.
The theme of trust. How much do we trust God? And because Abram trusted God so much that even when he didn't really believe that God was going to be able to pull off what God was promising, Abram knew God was good for it and believed him anyway. So even though he was having doubts, he still trusted and was still willing to go forward with God's plan.
Absolutely.
in the complicated ways, which we'll see in the next chapter. But he trusted the Lord still, even though he doubted.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some, I don't know, are there things where we trust the Lord, kind of? Maybe we should trust the Lord more?
I think anything and everything that we doubt, or anything that we struggle with on a daily basis, whether it's, understanding the world and how it is today, even. We still have to trust in the Lord and continue to push forward and trust and believe that the Lord is all around us. God is all around us. God is with us, and God is going to help us through everything that we're going through. We have to believe that.
So no matter how complicated and painful things get with the COVID virus, with the racial injustices,
job loss, all the stuff that's going on.
Unemployment, no matter how bad things get, and no matter how much we doubt that God might actually pull through in ways that we hope God will pull through, we can still trust.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, the serenity prayer, right? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
That's a really, really good and interesting prayer for the story this morning. As we find out next week, Abram continues to struggle with these promises, and he struggles with finding the wisdom to know which way he's supposed to go with God's promises, how much he's supposed to take on his own shoulders with God's promise. Because, of course, with God's promises, we got to take stuff on our own shoulders. We got to work along with God to make things happen, right? But Abram seems to really struggle with, where should I just do this on my own, or where should I be listening more for God and being more patient and hearing something from God before making these decisions? So, I don't know.
I think that's a good point.
Something to think about. And something to think about for Tuesday, because that's when we'll be on chapter 16. So we will reconvene then. By the way, the picture that we showed you of the building, Ryan Reed won the contest after the video on Tuesday. Ryan messaged in actually the comments under the YouTube video, and he asked if it was Ibrahim Mosque, and said, yes, absolutely correct, ding, 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 ding. And that is even a more sophisticated name than we were thinking of or we're going to ask for, because we're looking for the name, the Tomb or the Cave of the Patriarchs. Tomb of the Patriarchs is the common name that we were looking to go see, and we were asking about to go find Hebron.
He had to get the gold star on that one. That's an overachiever there.
A big gold star. So congratulations, Ryan. Amen. Not only for getting it right, but even going above and beyond our heads on this one, because the name that you gave is a name that a local person there would have given. So we are going to find something very special to present to you at worship this Sunday. So thanks again, Ryan. And folks, remember this other picture. This picture, remember, it shows a beach and some people at the beach, some water, but what in the world does this have to do with? It has an awful lot to do with the chapter that we read on Tuesday, Genesis chapter 14. So look in there for clues if you don't know, or just feel free to holler at us with a guess, and we are looking forward to hearing from you. Well, thank you, Megan. This is wonderful.
Thank you, yeah.
I love joining together with you for coffee and Bible. Tell you what.
I know. Me
so,
too.
And people of God, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again on Sunday, and then again right here in Bible Coffee next week. God bless you all. Peace be with you, and we'll see you again soon.
Have a nice day.